In this week's Drive, we see how the rich people get about, get into a bump and grind, catch up with the slowest world champion, and get a whole new perspective. All this and more in this week's Drive. Have you ever heard the expression setup from racing drivers and wondered what it means? In this week's look inside Formula One, we see one aspect of this vital process in the quest for speed. A car's suspension has to link the car to the road via its wheels and tyres. The suspension system is the part which absorbs the shocks of road surface irregularities and keeps the car close to, but off the ground, and keeps all four tyres firmly in touch with the tarmac so they can do their jobs. Steering, braking and transferring power with the pinpoint accuracy demanded by the world's top racing drivers, and every other motorist too. In Formula One, most of the arms visible between the car and its wheels are made of carbon composite materials, light and strong, and they're very thin for better aerodynamics.
Of course, nowadays it's all extremely safe because we understand the materials better and the material itself has improved. It's more resistant against high temperatures and against all the forces that can be exerted on it. But even so, it is still a tricky issue because the designers always want to make it as delicate as possible because of the aerodynamics and the weight.
Suspension design has become a high-tech science for racing engineers.
We actually have to compromise everything that suspension does because it also has to support the car and stop the car being pushed down into the tarmac by the aerodynamic forces. So we would actually like to have a really soft spring and a soft damper and make the wheel ride over the bumps. But if we do that, then we have to start the car with a really high ride height because when the downforce comes on, it's going to squash that soft spring. So again, we have a big compromise.
Complex ratios of leverage transmit impacts that the wheel experiences to the shock absorbers, so the car remains level and the wheel can stay in contact with the road. There is little movement, which is why there is little body roll. During braking, weight is transferred to the front wheels, and under acceleration, the front is unloaded. Stiff front and rear suspension limits this transfer and helps keep all four tyres on the road. The suspension is almost infinitely variable, although computer control, called active suspension, is banned in Formula One. The aim is to get a car which is stable over bumps and retains maneuverability without losing grip. The suspension is adjusted according to inputs from sensors on the car and what the driver feels is fastest. The sensors measure weight transfer as the car corners, brakes and accelerates, and compare wheel speeds to see if the car is sliding sideways slightly or powering forwards.
In principle, Formula One running gear is identical to the running gear of a passenger car. It has a wheel carrier, a disc brake, and also the wheel suspension. The forces are then transferred to the shock absorber and the springs. However, it is clear that the setup will be slightly different on a Formula One car than on a passenger car, and the spring travel has to be different because of the different requirements. A Formula One car has to drive as fast as possible, and again, this calls for a compromise, which doesn't allow for a great deal of comfort. Everything has to be taut and stiff. It has to be quick.
On the road, the range of road surfaces and the shocks we're faced with is far greater. Plus, we expect a lot more comfort than a Grand Prix driver is offered. This testbed at BMW can simulate almost any road speed and condition to test new designs to their limit and allow fine-tuning before the car is offered for sale.
The wheel suspension is so important because all the forces between the vehicle and the road, and between the road and the vehicle, are transferred via the suspension. This is particularly true of the braking, but also of accelerating and cornering. The task of the wheel suspension is to control the wheels perfectly so that the tyre contact area is always at the ideal level.
So, road cars and racing cars have the same aims in the suspension department. Luckily, computer systems aren't banned on the road, and advances in technology mean that road cars now offer more grip, performance and safety, with a kind of comfort that racing drivers can only dream about. From Formula One to NASCAR now, and race 27 of 36 got underway at Loudon, New Hampshire, with Ryan Newman on pole. Dale Earnhardt took the lead after 48 laps, and 30 laps later, Ricky Craven ran out of fuel, collected a penalty for pit lane speeding, and lost 4 laps. There was a frightening incident on pit lane on lap 128 when Jeff Gordon collided with Michael Waltrip. Gordon was trying to get into his pit next to Jimmy Johnson and didn't see Waltrip. Gordon hit 3 of Johnson's crew members. An onboard replay gives another view of the incident. All 3 were bruised but not seriously hurt and went straight back to work. 20 laps later, Johnson was back in trouble as his car got loose and touched Ward Burton. That sent Burton up into the outside wall. A similar accident took out Tony Stewart. He too ended up smacking into the outside wall after he was tapped by Ryan Newman.
Unfortunately, Tony Stewart.
A costly, embarrassing and dangerous moment for Michael Waltrip, the race leader, with 28 laps left. He left his pit with a fuel filler can still attached. That earned him a stiff penalty as fuel leaked out and onto the track. Johnson's crew chief closely monitored his fuel, and as the rest of the leaders were forced to pit for a splash and dash, Johnson moved closer and closer to the front and eventually regained the lead on the 294th of the 300 laps. He held on for his 3rd win of the season and his 6th career victory. Johnson only led for 12 laps to become the first driver to win both New Hampshire races in a season since the second event was added in 1997.
Bruises they're going to feel the next couple of days feel a lot better, won't it? Jimmy Johnson.
The start of the DTM race at Zandvoort proved chaotic as front row starter Martin Tomczyk made a terrible getaway, dropping 12 places and blocking his Audi teammate Matthias Ekstrom in the process. Poleman Timo Scheider grabbed the early lead. Scheider made his first obligatory pit stop early on lap 6. Local hero Christian Albers chased him for the first part of the race and pitted on lap 7. The day just got worse for Tomczyk at the first round of pit stops when he and Peter Dumbreck touched. Dumbreck's Opel was heading out and Tomczyk was coming in, but no damage was done. The wheels would soon come off Scheider's effort too, literally. At his second pit stop, he was signalled out and pulled away before one wheel was tightened properly. Feeling the front wheel wobbling, Scheider crawled to a halt at the exit of pit lane, allowing Albers a clear run. By this time, championship leader Bernd Schneider had fought his way up to 3rd, having started way down in 13th. With Scheider out, he went to 2nd. Behind the front pair, Ekstrom recovered from his first lap hold-up to get into a scrap with Manuel Reuter, which ended when the pair made contact, putting the Swede ahead until the flag. Christian Albers held on to win in front of his home crowd with Schneider 2nd, Ekstrom 3rd and Reuter 4th, ahead of the AMG Mercedes duo of Jean Alesi and Marcel Fassler. The victory means Albers closes to within just 1 point of teammate and championship leader Bernd Schneider in the overall standings with just 1 race remaining. Hockenheim in Germany. Porsche. Just the name conjures images of fast cars for the rich and famous. And probably the image which most readily springs to mind is that of the 911, a low-slung 2-seater with a rear-mounted flat-six air-cooled engine that delivers unending power and leech-like grip. For many, the ultimate sports car. Over the years, there have been many versions of the 911. Big flared wheel arches, whale-tail wings, soft-top cabrios and T-top Targas. Of course, there were racing versions aplenty. There was even a rally car built for the Paris-Dakar, which prompted a 4-wheel drive version, the then ultimate supercar, the 959. It doesn't feel like it, but in fact the 911 is now into its 4th decade. However, it has moved with the times. The engine's grown from 2 litres to 3.6, and for the very keen there's a turbocharged version. The engine is no longer air-cooled. Efficiency and noise requirements have forced water into the engine, but that sinuous body shape has remained almost unchanged. And the new 911 keeps the spine-chilling engine note and legendary driving sensations, faithful to the original. One of the new generation models is this, the Carrera 4S Cabriolet. Simply, this model gets the wide-body looks and brakes of the turbo, all-wheel drive, and an electrically stowing canvas roof, but not the awesome and for some intimidating power of the turbo. Interestingly, this model has the most rigid convertible 911 body shell ever, despite not having a steel roof structure. This is achieved with some extra stiffening and a slight weight penalty. Inside those wheel arches, there are enormous 4-piston Brembo brake calipers framed by equally enormous 18-inch wheels. A top-drawer car like this comes with a host of details: front and side airbags, ABS brakes, traction and stability controls. And if the unthinkable does happen, automatic rollover protection bars pop up behind the seats. The Cabrio's folding roof has been wind tunnel tested to 335 kilometers an hour, well in excess of the claimed top speed of 280. But now the 4S Cabrio driver can raise or stow the top even while the car is moving at speeds up to 50 kilometers an hour. Actuation is one button simple, and the whole operation takes about 20 seconds as the top performs its Z-bend fan dance, its articulated hard cover moving back and forth for clearance before sitting flush with the bodywork. The all-wheel drive system's effects are virtually unnoticeable, even in fairly brisk road driving. A viscous coupling sends only about 5% of power to the front wheels when the rears have traction, and up to a maximum of 40% when slippage is detected. Porsche's computerized stability program, PSM, takes over only when the driver has really messed things up. Think of it more as a safety net. It would take a high level of stupidity to break the rear tire's grip on the road. Should you need to know this, the car gets from standstill to 100 kilometers an hour in 5.3 seconds, and depending upon where you live, it'll cost something over $90,000. The MotoGP paddock in the lead up to a race tends to be a pretty serious place as technicians and riders get ready for the task at hand. But this is the Nelson Piquet circuit in Rio de Janeiro, where no one is immune to the infectious Brazilian samba beat, and the riders joined in. The colourful characters and costumes certainly seem to bring out the carnival instinct ahead of official practice for the race. Ducati stars Troy Bayliss and Loris Capirossi interrupted their preparation for the team's maiden race in Rio to get close to the carnival performers. Although all three world championships are still up for grabs, Valentino Rossi got into the spirit of things, going with the colours of the Brazilian flag. And worryingly for his rivals, the world champion now claims the Nelson Piquet circuit to be one of his favourites.
I came here the first time in the 96 with 125, and was one of the worst races in my career, crashing 3 times. Also one time in the race at the first lap, and say I hate this track. But after coming better, and it's possible win with 125, with 250, and with the 500.
With 5 races remaining, the Italian leads the MotoGP standings by 46 points from rival Sete Gibernau of Spain. Jeremy McWilliams of the Proton KR team hasn't had much success on the track. Maybe a career change is on the cards. Multiple 250 world champ Max Biaggi hasn't had much else to smile about this year either. But once the action on the track got underway, Rossi, currently 46 points in front with 5 events left on the calendar, rode his number 46 Honda round the bumpy and blisteringly hot circuit to claim his 6th pole position in an already dominant season. Italian compatriot Loris Capirossi would line up his Ducati alongside Rossi on the front row of the grid for the 12th round of the championship, 0.3 of a second behind the current world champ. The only rider with a realistic chance of catching Rossi is Spain's Sete Gibernau, but he would have to win the race and hope that Rossi failed to finish to keep his chances alive. But it was Gibernau who stumbled, falling off his Honda in a last-ditch attempt to snatch pole. He was able to take his place on the front row for the race. It was a disappointing session for Max Biaggi, unable to better the time he had set as the fastest lap on Thursday. Biaggi has only a slim chance of beating Rossi and Gibernau to this year's title. Australia's Troy Bayliss took 5th place at the end of qualifying, over a second slower than Rossi. In the 250 class, Tony Elias outpaced San Marino's points leader Manuel Poggiali to take pole position. Just 14 points behind Poggiali, Elias's time was a mere 13/100ths of a second faster than the championship leader, but the Spaniard would have the mental edge on race day. Roberto Rolfo of Italy and Frenchman Randy Depunier made up the front row. The opposite was true in the 125 class, where Spanish teenager Daniel Pedrosa tightened his mental grip on the championship, going half a second quicker than his nearest rival, Stefano Perugini of Italy. Pedrosa set a fastest time, a wafer-thing 13,000ths ahead of Alex De Angelis of San Marino, and 400ths better than Italy's Andrea Dovizioso. Perugini could only manage 6th on the grid, his efforts not helped by a series of incidents on the narrow circuit as the riders battled to get good setups on the bumpy track. Having never lost at the Brazilian track, Rossi could have been expected to blast away. But having taken pole with a record lap, Rossi made a surprisingly poor start and struggled in the early stages, with his main title rival, Sete Gibernau, leading from the front. Valentino's pole position time was the fastest ever lap of the Rio circuit by a motorcycle, more than 1.5 seconds faster than the previous fastest pole time set last year by Max Biaggi, although the official race record was held by Tadej Okada on the 2-stroke 500. Rossi moved steadily up through the field, and the race was effectively sealed when he passed Gibernau on the 9th lap. He streaked away to win by over 3 seconds, claiming an 18th consecutive podium finish. Only Giacomo Agostini has a longer string of consecutive podiums in the Premier class, 22 during the 1967, 68 and 69 seasons. Rossi won from Gibernau, while Japan's Makoto Tamada finished 3rd and Biaggi was 4th.
Speaking about easy for a victory is always wrong. I like very much this track. Also in the past make very good races, especially with the big bike, with the 500. I did the first victory in a dry condition, and after also in the past. So riding in this track is very good for me, for my style.
Honda took their 9th Constructors' World Championship in 10 years. They needed a single podium in Brazil to claim their 15th title, but actually took the top 5 places. In the 250s, title leader Poggiali won the race after Elias of Spain crashed out of the lead on the last lap. After 2 attempts to pass, Elias managed to overtake, but then lost control of the bike. Poggiali extends his lead to 22 points, while Roberto Rolfo of Italy jumps to 2nd spot and Elias drops to 4th. It was Aprilia's 92nd race win and 5th Constructors' title in the 250 class, putting them equal with MV Agusta, but trailing Honda and Yamaha, who have 17 and 14 titles respectively. In a 125 race where 9 riders contested the lead, 16-year-old Spaniard Jorge Lorenzo became the 2nd youngest rider ever to win a Grand Prix. Lorenzo passed 17-year-old Australian Casey Stoner and 19-year-old Alex De Angelis on the final lap. Lorenzo is the 7th different winner in the class this year. Championship leader Daniel Pedrosa, who is also 17, was 4th and extends his World Championship lead to 42 points over Stefano Perugini, who crossed the line 7th. The focus at the final round of the Trials World Championship was the battle between Dougie Lampkin and Takahisa Fujinami. Giving the Spanish fans plenty to cheer was Mark Friescher, who performed consistently on both days, 3rd place on Saturday and 2nd on Sunday, sealing 3rd spot in the title, equaling his best finish in the World Series. Fellow Spaniard Adam Raga was outstanding throughout the weekend, and the Gas rider won the first round, his first victory of the season, and repeated the feat on Sunday. It saw him edge out Britain's Graham Jarvis for 4th place in the championship by a single point. Japanese rider Fujinami needed 2 outstanding rides to snatch the championship from Lampkin, assuming that the Englishman slipped up himself. Unsurprisingly, Fujinami was feeling the pressure. He picked up 56 penalty points on Saturday, taking an unusually low 5th place and effectively ending his championship challenge. Lampkin, meanwhile, found his form when it mattered most. 40 penalty points was a poor score by his high standards, but it was good enough for second place. And with Fujinami back in fifth, it all but secured the overall title. It meant he needed to finish in 11th or better on the Sunday, which was a virtual formality. In fact, he managed third place behind Raga and Frisia, and that gave him an 18-point championship margin over the 23-year-old Fujinami. Due to land use issues, the final round of the championship made a last-minute change of venue, although in reality the move was not a major one, with the event shifting only a few extra kilometres north of the Spanish capital of Madrid. With some local knowledge, Spain's Adam Raga won both the weekend's rounds with relative ease. Lamkin has now equalled the legendary Spaniard Jordi Tarres's 7 world titles, although the Englishman is the first to do it in 7 consecutive years. At the age of 27, it's a fair bet that he may be able to raise the mark still further. There were also celebrations for the Montesa HRC team, finishing the championship with all 3 podium positions and giving them the manufacturer's title. Finally, freestyle motocross action at the 2003 Gravity Games, and Nate Adams focuses before his run. He needed a great final ride on Sunday afternoon to beat the highly favoured Travis Pastrana. He delivered with flair. The Gravity Games featured over 200 of the world's best action sports athletes competing in bike, freestyle motocross, skateboarding, aggressive inline and wakeboarding events.
Something he's not normally done. Yes! Big backflip transfer.
Watch again as Nate performs the awesomely difficult backflips and the perfectly timed off-the-bike running man moves, all with virtually no runoff in the confines of the stadium.
This guy completely put it in. Look at the second flip. Watch the front wheel. Look at how smooth he comes in, real high in the tranny. Not even making a sound when he lands, except for that engine just purring. And look at this. No hands, no feet, running man in the middle of the air on the side of the bike.
His score of 91 points was good enough to upset Pastrana and the rest of the field. Pastrana, who came into the 2003 Gravity Games undefeated, scored an 87.5 in a first run that included several impressive backflips.
Transferring a backflip.
But at the end of the run, Pastrana missed his landing while attempting yet another backflip and suffered a mild concussion. Pastrana would walk away, otherwise unhurt, to take home his first silver medal in FMX competition. So, whether it's high-tech, high-impact or high-intensity, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.